Started. So Jay will probably be late, and I didn't hear from anybody else, so.
Minutes.
Yeah. You got it. Here. So that's from August.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So. Then there are 5 people here, there's enough to start the meeting. Oh, Jay. All of that work.
Right, I know, it's just.
Oh,
Yeah, but that was.
Done nothing.
Oh, good. Timing. How's everybody?
Good, we're good.
All right,
Is this an extra?
let's take a breath there.
yeah, right.
You just come from New Haven? Yeah. And it down by the Yale Spine Center, and they're down on Long Wharf, so it's like right on the.
Yeah.
on the- so
or this
Yeah.
week.
So-
Yes, I know. I
and
haven't
it's-
seen you in Kansas in a long time.
Yeah, I know, I played golf this morning, it was cold, so
Yes. it's true.
I've been home, I would have changed by now. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening. Got anybody there? Amy, I see you're up there.
So was the meeting last night long?
No, good, that I can quick.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the most people were there with the ambulance association.
What meeting was this?
This was a informational meeting about the ambulance building and about the bonding we want to do for purchasing that building. Very quick meeting, not a lot of, I think there were 2 questions. And Jim did a nice PowerPoint, good explanation about the history and why the need for it, the additional space. We had our bond counsel, not bond counsel, but our financial advisor there talking about the different scenarios for bonding. I think we're gonna talk about it tomorrow, as well, the Board of Selectmen using some of the fund balance that we have, because we're gonna be up to close to 6 months worth of fund balance, which is
Wow.
only about 2-3.5 times more than were recommended, so we're good, which is a great thing for the town
So how
in
much is
some
that?
ways. We're
Around that?
we're right now at about 5, I think, million, which is 5 months, so it's
That's exactly what the housing commission needs.
and we're gonna put it, and yeah, well, I was gonna come to your meeting last night, but I guess next week, so
Yeah. I know.
let's talk about that. But it looks like right now at the end of this past year that ended June 30th, we're gonna put in another 750,000. So each year, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this part of it, but each year we budget every year to use about $1 million out of the fund balance to cover the operating costs, because we do have a lot built up and we don't want to keep overtaxing people. Not that our taxes are, obviously pretty good comparatively speaking. And every year we end up having more money left, and we end up putting 500,000, 700,000 back in and add to it every year. So the ambulance, this makes to me some good sense, and we'll talk about it with the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Finance to use some of that to cover the cost of this, of the renovation and building at the ambulance building. So one of the things when we get down to it under new business, I wanted to talk about, since I'm on this building committee over there, assuming the public approves the money next week, are what kind of things do we want to talk about in terms of recommendations on building that building? So anyway.
Under the new business building to net zero.
So,
Yeah,
right,
I mean,
right, building to net zero, whatever I called it that, there's a lot of different just ways you can
Yeah.
talk about it. Chris
That's
sent
the
some
kind of-
stuff out.
kind
And
of-
it seems like the town's trying to, we're trying to do things to set an example, and that would be something we could also do if we get the funds. So,
Should be the museum.
right. All right, anyway, I'll call the meeting to order here at 5:05. We did get minutes, didn't we? I remember reading them, so I'll make
There's
a,
copies in there.
oh,
Yeah.
thank you, if you don't. I stopped at home real quick to get my stuff, and so here we go. So, make a motion to approve the minutes of the August 9th meeting. I have a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments, concerns, questions? Carol?
Well, I was reading about the waiver. It said the survey results will be available in the fall, but when are they handing out the survey?
Well, we'll talk about that when we get to that first
That
item.
doesn't make sense if it'd be available in the fall.
Oh, it's still the fall, right?
Yeah,
You mean next fall?
No, this fall,
fall.
this fall.
Who did a survey?
The survey is coming out in the next week or two. That was gonna be under my report there, under number A.
Okay.
So as I checked in, was following up to see when, no, that's okay, that's why, so we should, and the results should be available. Well, maybe the first of the winter, but when's winter start? December 20?
Next week?
yeah.
No,
December.
so, all right, any other questions, concerns on the minutes? Otherwise, everybody in favor, say aye. My second item on my agenda after the minutes is I wanted to welcome you, Rogers, to our meeting and our group. Most of you know
What did you give his name?
Hugh,
Hugh.
Hugh.
H-U-G-A, that's my husband.
Yeah,
Oh.
so Hugh had,
No, I'm just saying.
Hugh had an interest in joining the committee. We talked about it and he has some good experience on a variety of environmental issues, particularly the river. I'll let you. River Alliance and he had, and I was informed he had some free time, so I can find some free time to fill up for him. And thank you for joining and welcome. Thank you. So, we'll just, what I wanted to do tonight is go back over things we've been working on and then get down to the new business item on building. And all, so wakeboarding.
Okay, so Jim did his thing, let him use the lake for the rest of the summer. So I did my thing and I did a little survey. And apparently at the meeting with all the people that wanted the wake boats, a man said, well, we could just go in one part of the lake, we'll only destroy one part of the lake. Well, that one part apparently is right where I live, so.
No, there's no coincidence
No,
there, right?
So from July to September, I kept track, and what they do is they go out on the, you know, I guess the widest part of the lake,
That's the,
and they go back and forth and back and forth, and so, and they would go out sometimes at 8 o'clock at night. They were trying to be, you know, cool about it,
Right,
and then 5 o'clock at night. So I did a little measuring and, the latest thing was 17 feet, and they're nowhere near that, but anyway, they're done for the summer. The damage continues.
Right.
But,
well, we all know that we were disappointed, at least I'll speak for myself, disappointed that we didn't get something done this summer. I understand.
I don't understand when are they starting the study?
So the survey is gonna be done this month, is what I understand. There'll be survey coming out. There'll be links to it from Jim's. I'm not sure exactly how the whole distribution will be.
That'll go out to the whole town?
Yeah, yes, it's not just the people who live on the lake.
No, that's right.
As one guy said, that they should be able to monitor it themselves and
Yeah.
not worry about everybody else, but,
So-
I thought that was a good one, but anyway.
I just wanted to
Yeah,
jump
you
in,
know,
'cause I have
sure.
wanted a shocking call
Oh,
to
great.
ask me about doing surveys, because
Oh.
we've done them.
Yeah,
And it was just interesting, because a lot of what we sort of learned from our sustainable, equitable training.
Yeah.
Reaching those that
don't
you
really-
don't
yeah.
normally reach. I talked to them about the electronic ways with the selectmen's email, but we also talked about putting something in the next newsletter, flyers, QR code to find it. Paper copies at the senior center that can then be hand entered.
like that.
Yeah, so when I talked to, I said, you know, you could stand at the transfer station, which we did for. Housing, the.
Was it housing or the childcare center, one of the other?
No, it was
Yeah.
for the house, affordable housing plan. Anyway, we just talked about different ways to meet, to reach out to people that aren't usually reached. So hopefully, and then he was gonna go back to the company to work on the questions. They just sent an email I got there like yesterday.
Yeah.
Asking if anybody else had questions, so I would plan, I think that we're seeing that soon.
Yeah.
But anything we can do to make sure people see it, you know, we can, it'll be in the link to the survey, will go out in the selectmen's email, but share it with your friends, or, you know,
Right,
I'll make sure
right.
we can share it to the commissions, just to
Keep
keep.
up with the question.
the company that they've hired, I think, is gonna be doing the questions, and it was interesting, Sean had done a lot of research about, surveys and how not to make them biased, so he wants to make sure that he has a professional
Right.
doing the survey questions.
And any of you who had a chance, I don't know if anybody had a chance to look at that, the video that Jim sent out a couple
Yeah.
months ago. I mean, I thought the company was, did a good job and they knew what they were doing. I was impressed with what they had to say and how they did their work. So I'm hopeful that that will. And I do, while I wish we had done something this year, I understand the idea of doing next year. What they'll do then in starting in May is they'll be doing sampling of the lake before boats get out there and then sample as the summer goes through to be able to really prove this is the damage. We know this is,
We just need a compliment, they need the science.
right. So that's what that'll do. And by, we'll have a report at the end of the season, probably early at this time, and then the board will be able to move forward with whatever the results or whatever we feel is appropriate at that point. So that's moving along. So, and really, Carol was the one who sort of woke us up to this, at least me anyway, and appreciate that. And, we're keeping going at it, no matter, So, low impact sustainable development, Chris and I, was it yesterday?
Yeah.
Boy, that was a long 3 o'clock yesterday afternoon, my goodness. We,
Long 24 hours.
yeah, we met with, we have a committee, looking into how do we implement low impact sustainable development into our zoning regulations. And the committee is, Jim, myself, Chris,
Peter Bowman,
Mary Ann Haverstack, and Shelley White
and
from,
Bob Paxson.
and Bob Papson, right? It wasn't Janet involved? Janet's been involved, but she hasn't come to our meetings like.
She 21, 29.
But and Wayne Holman too. So we've had discussions. We have all the appropriate players, planning, zoning, wetlands involved in this. Everybody's agreed that this is something that the town needs to do. We did learn yesterday that the state is coming out with a manual in April 2024, not mandated. That was an interesting thing. It's just here's guidelines of what you should do. Clearly, the committee feels like we want to say this is what you have to do if you're going to do this work in Washington. So we met with one of the two, we put out an RFP and we got 2 applications. We met with one of the applicants yesterday and we're going to meet with the other one hopefully next week, make a decision. The way they both have talked about the work getting done, we should have reports in April, May, which we will hopefully then, what the plan would be then, to then bring them to the appropriate committee, zoning, wetlands, planning, and get that through to be able to then have that as part of our zoning regs, basically, is what it is. Anything, Chris, you want to add to that?
It's apparent that one of the contenders includes a stormwater manual,
Yes.
and the other one said they thought they might be able to squeeze it in.
Right, so our committee has discussed this numerous times. We're trying to put something together that is usable by the public, usable by any architect, I guess you would say, right, Chris, engineer knows about this and knows what to do. What they need from us is, here's what Washington says is what you have to do for this. It's not a choice, it's a part of the plan. What we have discussed at our level, and I mean, this stuff, a lot of stuff is beyond me, but I get the idea of getting something that's easy to use as a manual. Other towns have incorporated all of these different aspects into their zoning regs. So if you want to find it, you got to kind of go into the regs and keep looking for it. We felt that it would be easier to have something attached to the end of our document and, address our zoning regs as appropriate, but basically refer to that document so that it's not having to change 47 things within planning regs. It's refer to the document, and that's a part, there's just an addendum, an addendum to the zoning regs. So and part of this thing is really a lot of training when we're done, public education too. So, which we've asked them to do as well, so.
Well, and well, the way it was described to the Morris Planning and Zoning
Right.
Commission, when they considered it and then chose to adopt the stormwater manual, was, this is, you have to incorporate LISD engineering, okay? But the manual is more like a menu of all the different approaches to handling different things.
Right.
So that puts it on the engineer has to be the one that basically says, okay, we've incorporated LISD by doing this. I think it does mean then that staff has to have a real substantial learning education. So that they know what they're looking at or looking for. And it's way above my pay grade. That's why I hired an engineer. But I think that the thing that Jim was getting at, and everybody, I think, was one, this is a real issue when you look at town roads and infrastructure of schools or 32,000 square foot house being built on all of our road. Okay, but you also need to get the community to buy into it. And part of doing that is making so that it is not like this, oh my God, another regulation.
Right.
But maybe there's a layman's manual that could come from the conservation district. They could be hired to put something together. So a homeowner can look at it like, wow, rain garden is a pretty cool thing. And I run the gutters into that and I actually can install it. You know?
Do it yourself, right?
It's not like insurmountable.
Right.
It's more like an opportunity.
Right, so that's, we're working towards that, and I think the key thing for us is, everybody agrees, it needs to be a requirement, not just a suggestion.
Not a suggestion.
And that it has to have some teeth to it, you know, so that's part of that's a good, everybody's in agreement with that, I think that's important. So,
And then the one thing I would say is, that I think everybody is looking at, maybe this is a learning process for the committee as well. So after the interviewing the second person, we may send out to them a request to provide additional pricing for things that we think are missing,
Right.
one or both, whatever. So it's which I think is a good way to.
yeah, I thought it was, because even the group we talked with yesterday had, oh, I never thought of that kind of stuff, at least for me, you know.
We'll figure it out once you hire us.
Yeah, now Mary Ann, you know, and all three of our staff, I think, have experience and certainly the ability, you know, the knowledge to learn and put that in place. And that's
So-
great.
It occurs to me, and with
Yeah.
what you're saying, Chris, if these new regs are gonna affect new construction and, you know, major renovations. But I think it might be a nice idea for the sustainability committee in the future to do a little LISD educating, like you said, a rain garden or
Right.
some, you know, things that you can do in your existing
Right.
home. That you, because if you're not going into the building department or zoning for a permit, you're not gonna encounter these, but some best practices and why it's important would be a great article, and it's something you could do outreach on.
I was thinking, you know, with all the rain we're having lately, I know people's had their basements
Oh, I
flooded that they
walk in my
didn't have all the time. There's things you can do, you know, yourself, you know, just to prevent that and to do something, you know, to help yourself, so.
And I could actually, a history of a long driveway we installed, where, the installer did not follow the engineer's plans. And it was all designed to LISD. And I knew this when he left the job. I said, well, that's beautifully crowned in the middle. And I'm thinking, wait a second, that wasn't the plan. 3 days later, we had a substantial rain and it washed out.
Well,
And Harry White came in with the engineer and a lot of experience in roads, dirt roads.
Yeah.
Right? And people can't believe how it holds up,
Yeah.
you know, and it basically was, you know, LISD design.
Well, one of the things they brought up that I hadn't thought about, I'm sure some other folks on the committee talked about, was how important it is to work with Public Works to train them in how to do that, because clear, what do we have, 17 miles of dirt road in town,
28,
28
Yeah,
that's what the.
Okay.
just dirt road.
dirt road.
Yeah, that's what the selectmen said.
Okay,
He must have been,
I got 17 in my head, so maybe it's 28. But it's a good 20% of our roads, and we spend probably 80% of our dollars fixing them, you know, because they get washed out all the time. There's gotta be better ways. First off, some places we put roads in where they probably shouldn't have roads. But other places, you have to design it so that,
well, a lot of
It
times
doesn't-
roads would just evolve from being like a carriage ride.
deer trail.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So, all right, so that's where we are with that, so that's moving along. Unsustainable town practices, that's what I keep calling that. I met with, I think I told last time I had met with Kevin Smith from the Highway Department and Mark Showalter, our facility manager, and talked about putting together an inventory of equipment that the town has. One is, because we don't have one, I mean, we have an inventory of the main trucks and things like that, but we don't really have another inventory of all the little equipment and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things we had charged Mark with when he got hired this past year was putting together an inventory of the town's kind of the infrastructure, the boiler, how old's the roof in each of the buildings? When are they gonna, what's the expected life expectancy, those kind of things, so we can, one, plan for replacement and also budget for, saving.
You need that.
Yeah, so we did meet, I followed up with them a couple weeks ago and they both said, sorry, haven't had all the time in the world to work on that yet, but we have a date, they both, and I have full faith in them that by the end of this month, we'll have that information together. We have started looking at purchase some battery powered leaf blowers. We had our leaf blower for the town was dying, so we bought, and we
good.
also bought. Mark and Kevin did some research and I forget what brand they bought, but one of the things they're trying to do, we talked about, is buying the same brand so you can switch batteries and batteries can go from one place, one piece of equipment to another. So I know Mark bought, we had a credit at one store and we bought a couple of leaf blowers and a bunch of batteries so that use up the credit for one. And then when we look at next set of equipment, we'll continue to buy the same so that we can, so the batteries are interchangeable. That's the goal there. So that's moving along. And my goal there is really to get an inventory together and get a plan together to purchase stuff as they, the end of life kind of thing. But want to have it done before we start the budget process so that we'll have that in place for thinking about next year and starting, so.
And discussions like mulching instead of blowing.
Well, we talked about that too, actually, and that's what I asked them to think about. Like, I also asked, what kind of, I don't know what we use, fertilizer, or whatever we use on our grounds, and I know we've had discussions with Kevin, the show we did before, about what kind of material he uses to put on the roads, in the winter time, and he has made an effort. I don't know if it's still the best thing out there, but he has really made an effort to try to try to buy stuff that's more environmentally friendly, things that when you put that, whatever the mixture is on the roads, but we want to keep looking at that. That's the idea.
Does the state? They do their own,
The state,
right? I mean, it pains me whenever I walk over the bridge coming to the depot and I see the piles of salt they put on the bridge. I know the bridge is
right.
slippery, but it walks
interesting
right into
thought.
the river.
Well, that's also interesting because, that's one of the things we, as a town, we all know, the state takes care of the state roads, we take care of our
We have
roads.
a lot of.
But they intersect with our roads.
Right, and they
Well,
drain into our rivers.
and they drain into
I
our
was wondering,
river,
do you guys, have you folks at the river folks talked about that kind of thing? How the
I just got involved with something called the Green Plow Program. So the state offers training to town road crews. And
Kevin did it.
what alerted me was that I saw a map of all the towns that have been trained and are certified green plow. And all the towns around us have and we haven't. So,
We're not certified, Kevin
Because
told me he did it.
Kevin did the training, that interesting.
well, okay, so I did get in touch with, I guess it was
Right,
you
right.
and Jim. And so Jim, either, I guess Jim talked with Kevin.
Yeah.
And Kevin said, we exceed we exceed Green Plow's protocol. We are more
Yeah.
scrupulous, more picky than they are. So we, you know, that, I guess, and that was the end of it. So, so I didn't take it any further.
I wonder if he just didn't feel like doing the paperwork to get certified.
Yeah, because I think it'd be great to be something to say, you know, we
Yeah.
are certified and, you know, we
Wonder-
exceed the standards the state has set.
Right, it would be
Yeah.
a nice thing to have
Can you-
documentation.
Yeah.
Send me that and I'll follow up or
Oh, sure.
with Kevin about it.
The
Yeah,
links
let's
to
see what's
the
involved in
program.
getting
Yeah.
certified.
Yeah.
Yeah, what'd you call it? What
It's
was it?
basically Green Plow. That's the shorthand for
Does
it.
that mean that the state, since the state offers that, does that mean that they follow those protocols on their own roads?
You know, I'm not sure. I'm not sure
I find it hard to
because,
believe because
well,
of what I see them dump on.
you know,
47.
I ride my bike out Route 47 to 202. And there's definitely an area right from the edge of the pavement towards Beaverbrook that is vegetation free. My thinking is it's because of
Oh, you know, they spray
car
stuff.
wash from road application,
Hello?
but I don't know.
Amy, did you?
Anyway,
She's just muted
Oh,
herself.
Yeah.
She's answering her phone.
Yeah, so, yeah, that's a good
that's all.
question.
And that's something I meant to do was contact the state and
That'd be
say,
great.
how do we find out what's being applied? Because Beaverbrook is, you know, vulnerable
Yeah,
and, important and, didn't get there.
So I will just say anecdotally, I have a very shallow well and I'm on
We
the
do too.
just behind portal 7 and. So it's been a little while now that I've tested, but I test it every couple of years and so often been high in sodium. And I can only imagine it's from road
Yeah.
runoff, like
Well,
I
it's
don't
interesting that
naturally
you brought this up because what got me on it, at Rivers Alliance, was that a case came to our attention in Litchfield, in which the state had admitted polluting a private well, and they were assuming the costs for remediation. And so the person was asking Rivers Alliance for, you know, who can I get for a lawyer to defend me, all the whatever. And that's how so that's when I got interested in this. But so there's a record already of this happening. And you do wonder about what's out there that hasn't been discovered.
and I did read about, I remember reading about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It was in the news.
Yeah.
Well, and my well, it filters through a fair amount of soil
Oh,
to
yeah.
get
But still.
there. So when I see the piles of salt on the bridge, knowing it washes directly into the
right,
river, I
right.
see it
Yeah.
rushing.
Right.
Well, if you would follow up, I think that'd be great, and I'd like to follow up with Kevin if we're exceeding it. I think it's good to know and be able to say, you know,
Yeah.
folks,
Yeah,
because it
show
comes up every year at a,
Show us
in
your
the-
work.
yeah.
You know, I mean, it's nice to
Yeah.
see, if you're saying that,
Yeah, let's,
I-
yeah.
Right.
And I know
show
from-
us your documentation, or how do you, what brings you to say that?
Because invariably it does come up at a board of selectmen meeting in the wintertime. Sometimes somebody comes in and says, you know, and especially on the dirt road areas, to be honest with you, is where we hear from people most about that. But I'd be interested, you know, if we're exceeding that, I think that's, you know, I know there's, at least the little I know about it. I don't know how you're ever gonna be perfect with it, but the most you can do, and if he's doing that, that's good to know.
Yeah, no, and if there's exceeding, you know, the Green Plow standards, well, then that's great.
But so much of it is developing a culture where everybody's buying into it, so that the person who's driving the truck and
Right.
releasing the salt has the same mindset.
Right, that's a
as
good
the-
point.
You know, I mean, that's and I think it requires repetition and everybody talking about it.
We should do training
and
at the
over again.
beginning every year, you know, so when you
It's
stop,
not a
you don't keep
one-time
your thing going around and around while you're
Right,
stopped,
right.
yeah.
Right,
So.
That's
and
great.
You would have a little better perspective on this because your involvement in Rivers Alliance, but my sense of, you know, people I grew up with who've been fishermen their whole lives, hunters their whole lives. They had really unique perspectives on the streams they, you know, fish in, the river. Some of them for over 70 years, okay? And they feel like they see a real deterioration in terms of the number and size of fish. I know Trout Unlimited has always been very committed to protecting. Anyway, so
Yeah.
you're getting the community to buy in, that's something like that cuts across all political
Everything.
boundaries,
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
It's like there's people who love being here, love, you
Right.
know, fishing and things like that.
Well,
It's
in my
not
reading
right.
on this, one thing I discovered was that the way it is monitored is by taking samples from the river. And, you know, wherever the river is, but across the board, what they're discovering is that salt and salinity levels in streams does not die as much as you'd think it would over the summer. It contains it continues, there's residual salt buildup. And because it's in basically the water table and it's leaching into the river. So you get a real year-round sustained level of salinity, not just a peak when they, you know, happen to dump a.
Right, it's not just after a storm, it continues and it builds up is what you're really saying.
Yeah, so,
It's in the soil.
Yeah.
probably.
Yeah,
so, yeah, that affects all aquatic life. Frogs, turtles, you name it,
So
so.
unless we have river readings, we don't really know.
right. That's a good point.
And
Well-
then it would be interesting to know what kind of testing Steve practiced with, because they are along so much of the Chicago, and I know Brian has talked to
Yeah.
us. But the temperatures,
Yep.
like all sorts of river health, so we might have some more data there.
One of,
Steep rock, yeah.
testing, I'll make a note of that here too. And that reminded me of two things I wanted to add here, but I also, I tried to have a meeting with the head of the Ag Center, who's now on paternity leave. So I did, I got in touch with him the end of August. And he asked me, can you wait a couple of weeks to school starting? I said, fine. I emailed him back in mid-September. He said, I'm sorry, but I'm going now. My wife's having a baby, so he's out right now. But I was gonna talk with him. We had talked about the idea of hiring a student to work on the whole invasive species idea. I know they've done other stuff up there on testing and, you know, I don't know if they have somebody who might be interested in working with Steep Rock or doing so, you know, as a senior project or something, doing some testing like that, you know, so I'll get in touch with him. I was thinking the end of this month. I'm not sure how long he's out for. And
Well, at the common ground gathering that we had, the WEC had a sign up table and some of the teachers there put emails that I can't decipher, so I have to, but they were interested in stuff on a regular basis that students could be involved
that's-
with,
yeah.
and I thought, perfect, and now we have stuff.
Right.
But, so I'll just have to go to the gunnery and find out who is this person whose email I can't decipher, but
Well-
if they're looking
Their
for.
emails are uniform,
Yeah,
so if you go to the directory, you'll probably be able to decipher it, if you
Right.
could get just a couple letters.
it's all
It's
the
all-
last
it's
name
always
and
like-
first
Yeah,
initial.
yeah,
Region
Yeah,
12,
and,
Well,
or region.
yeah, that's how Region 12 is, I forget how FGS does it, but same idea.
but it's better if there's a staff member attached
Oh,
to
yeah.
the students.
Well, I think would be, if we could get if I can get a meeting again with this director, he seemed very interested in participating, knowing about some of the things that are going on in town, so I think that would be a great way to get them involved.
It ties in with getting
They're-
students involved.
Right, and they're all also doing composting up there already, and so they are doing things up there that taking the initiative ahead of us, so that'd be great.
Or the.
That's a Shabbat.
Yeah, absolutely. You know Sophie Gilliam?
Yes,
Yeah,
she
she's-
started that program
Yeah,
up
and
there.
she's presented a program to
Right,
WEC, and I
right.
think we need to pursue her initiative.
So the next thing is this composting thing and really should have been the transfer station, what we're collecting, and I didn't get a chance to. I went back and I've been working with Jeff Hammond to collect data for us on municipal solid waste, recycling, scrap metals, demolition materials, electronic recycling. That's stuff we've been collecting. This goes back to 2016, 17, and every year since. What we're also doing now is collecting data on the composting material. I saw it was up there Saturday, and we have a 6th barrel up there now. We used to, started with 2, now we're up to 6.
That's awesome.
We broke out the glass, so now we're getting data on how much glass we're collecting. Textiles, we had 1 bin collecting textiles. These are worn clothing, I keep, stuff you can't donate to Goodwill or whatever. We have 2 of those bins now up there because 1 wasn't enough. We have 2 bins collecting clothing. We collect books. We still collect tires up there. We collect refrigerant, propane tanks. So I've worked talking with Liz up there at the transfer station, and she does get information. Some of this doesn't come down to town because we don't get paid. Some of the stuff they just take, we don't pay for it to do that. And so, but she gets information about how many bins, how many times a year or a month do they come and take the bins away, kind of thing. How much they do know how many because they have to report propane tanks, I think, to the state. So we have some of those numbers. Some of them are numbers, and some of them are just they came and emptied the bin. So I can't tell you how much stuff is in there. They don't weigh it or anything. But we're collecting all that this year as well. So we should have some good information that we can post to say this is what the town's.
What about solid waste?
So that's municipal solid waste.
Yeah, but I mean, the household garbage, like
Yeah.
that's all the recycling
Yes,
stuff, you're
yes.
collecting that now.
So the interesting thing is, I'll pass this around, but from 2016 to 2021, we collected about 2,000 tons of municipal solid waste took
Now-
left. And now in the last 2 years, it was 591 tons, and last year it was 510.
Now, you still have somebody coming in on Thursday.
Well, not too much longer. So what's happened is, the significant is that All American Waste, which is one of the companies the biggest company that picks up household garbage, is no longer dumping at the town because we had issues with them picking up, bringing commercial waste that they weren't allowed to, and also picking up, not being able to.
Imagine.
Yeah, and not being able to certify that some of the stuff that was coming wasn't from outlying towns, because they have a route. The guys are, they're not just picking up in town, so they have no longer, but we're also cutting out the glass now we're cutting out the composting, a lot of the garbage material out of that, so that should have an impact, as well as out of our recycling, cutting out the glass, because that's what they say, a third of the weight, I think, of our recycling is glass. And talking with Liz and Liddy up there, people come up with when they first come up with their recycling, they have glass in there. They say, well, you recycle the glass now separately. They're like, oh, great. They have never had anybody who says, I don't want to do that and just dump. I mean, they're very cooperative, and they see the composting now, and they have people come up and just dump the compost. They don't come up to do, anything, but so it's really been effective. So that's, I'll send this out to everybody. I meant to make copies, but that didn't happen this morning, so. But
I said this before, when you talk with Liz or Liddy.
Yeah.
About what they're seeing and observing and experiencing, it is amazing. They're like better than Gallup.
yeah,
They're just identifying all this stuff, you see some amusing patterns, right? But they really, I think they work hard to getting people to get comfortable with it. And to make it run smoothly, and they're a source of wealth of information.
They are.
It's really interesting.
They are. One of the things I've tried to do, and I don't know, I was gonna ask if somebody would like to maybe take this on, is I'd love to see us, I've talked about this before, about right now, everybody brings their food waste up there, and then it gets taken over to New Milford, and we pay for that. We pay by by the bin. We do get a tonnage amount or a weighted amount back from them but it's basically by the bin. It's not by the weight that we pay for it. And I'd love to see us start trying to develop a program where we just compost ourselves up at the transfer station, not ship it somewhere else, but we do the whole process. And there is money available for it. There's towns, Ridgefield, I know does it. I know Woodbury was looking into that as well, and I just haven't had the time to do that, to follow up. So if somebody is interested, would be,
I bet Wilton does it.
well, I'll bet you they do, given their other stuff.
Given their other.
Are you gonna pursue that?
Who was, I
What?
sent,
No,
I
I
sent
mean,
you
I
an
will look
email.
The state, there was a training on it too.
Okay.
Is that the one?
Yeah,
No, I
Well,
didn't.
Ridgefield.
It was Cornwall
or
or somewhere,
contact Wilton.
that tried,
Yeah.
anyway.
Well, I
it's-
know there's been some
like a
issues.
certification process,
Yeah.
it's a little challenging.
And that's the problem. One of the things the state, I remember reading and follow up from what I think you said, sent to me, the state has to oversee this and approve whatever you're doing. And there was something about, like, they first wanted you to compost leaves and that kind of thing first to get so you could practice doing it. And as somebody's said around here, most people don't, you blow it into your woods, people don't have to, it's like, it was like, somebody said something about the dog park, well, the whole town is a dog, so what, really, but. So I don't know what the rules are. I think that's an issue too, is following up with the state, what you have to do in order to do that. But I know there is funding out there to do that. And I know I know at least minimally Ridgefield has done that. And they have a 3-bin tiered system going on and the whole
Monique and
thing.
I are on it.
What's that?
Monique
All
and I
right,
are on it.
great, thank you. I
We have
appreciate
a
it.
team, we have
I
a
appreciate
compost
that.
team.
And I forgot a couple things on my agenda here, so I'm gonna add them while I'm thinking about it. I mentioned the transfer station, idling. Monique and I met yesterday with Mark Gosson, the superintendent of Region 12. And I had met with him this past summer, to talk about, just introducing myself, and then I mentioned about the idling campaign that we were doing here in town. He was very enthusiastic. It was the shortest meeting I've had in a while, even shorter than some of our board of selectmen meetings. I brought the sign that we had, I took the one from the poet, brought it to him. He took it with him and he was going up to the high school. And Michelle sent him copies of the flyer today
I
that we've
brought
been
the
using.
thing at the elementary school. Where's the banner?
In my office.
We should put, I said, can we put up is the word vehicle?
Now I had to figure out how to fix it on a banner.
Okay.
Fix it on I sent, the PDF I sent him is fixed, I don't know how to fix it on a banner, I'll think of something.
So,
Yeah, but I think he said,
He's
yeah, let's put up
interested
the
in it.
banner.
I did, by the way, I did see the sign at the primary school, and it's by the front door, but that's not the parent drop off,
No.
that's where the buses are.
right, that's not a good.
Which
well,
the buses,
The buses need to stop idling
well,
too.
I
they're
know,
required by law, I think.
They
do that.
are?
Oh, yeah,
to
that's how the whole
to turn
thing's.
it off, to turn them off.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but it's
But they
weird
don't.
because they aren't there very long, the buses,
Three,
the parents.
So where's
Yeah.
the drop off?
It's painted on the parking lot, those stop signs and
you come
there's
in,
like a turnaround.
yeah, it's not very good.
Oh, I'll relocate it
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Well, he's gonna, I don't know if they just put it there because I brought it to his office and he just put it outside to start with. I know he said Friday, they have a weekly blast as well, they were gonna put that out. He also said he wants to do it in Roxbury, Bridgewater as well, could we borrow the signs? And I said,
I
sure.
changed the flyer to say
I-
Region
I think
12,
that's
Right.
great.
Yeah,
so that he can send it to everybody. I really think though, that in order to make things happen in the
Yeah.
building, we need to talk to the principals. Like if Emily Judd is on board at Washington Primary, she will know where that sign should be. They have their own pickup and drop
Oh, all right.
protocols that Mark is probably not as aware of
right.
as the superintendent. He's giving the go ahead, but I think
And I did offer that if he wanted to, that Monique and I would come to a PTO meeting or, anything like any other kind of meeting to talk about it, take 10 minutes and at least inform people about why. And I don't get the superintendents. I imagine I could sign up for that, but
You know, I used to, and then I get some of his emails. You can sign up for the Region 12. You can go onto their website, just like ours.
Cause I'd like to just see what he's sending out and see what it is, and we can follow up.
Are
on
you
it.
gonna connect with Emily Judd?
Sure,
And the only reason I ask is because I've been very unsuccessful in connecting with her. She doesn't respond to email.
okay, well.
Right. So maybe,
I'll
If you
use,
strike out, let me know.
all right, I'll use,
yeah, let me know how
I'll
it
use
goes.
my
I'll just
select.
call her or something.
Yeah, do your selection thing. You probably have more clout than I do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting, because I've thought a lot about it, like with the drop off, you know, with the parent, because you move every time they drop off, which
Right.
so it's tricky, like I feel like they might need to change the way they do it.
Well, it's
Well, I
not
was the
that,
one who put the sign out in front and obviously nobody's moved it.
well, it's not so much to me that, because if they're moving along, you know, that, it takes 10, I mean, I've done, you know, in my life, you know, you do that, it does, it's the people who are getting there 30 minutes beforehand to be first in line that sit in their car
Right.
and wait for the, you know,
Yeah,
that's,
I got-
those are
yeah.
the people that I really feel.
Yeah.
The other folks, you know, you get in line, they kind of move along, and you're out,
You come like after a sports practice to pick up your kid, and you sit there for 15 minutes.
right, exactly, and if
Right,
you
that's
get
a
it,
good point.
you get it when it's cold and you get it but then don't come 15, 20 minutes, you know, really, you gotta be first in line, how fast does the line really go that you're that?
Yeah, is it that long? Yeah.
Come on, so that's kind of what
That's
I,
a voluntary thing, right? 'Cause
yeah, well,
I've gone up to the trucks on, you know, they park on the road and they just leave the
Yeah.
truck running for like an hour.
well, no, that is not voluntary, there is a state
State
statute.
something.
No, there's a state,
There's a
law.
state statute that says 3 minutes,
3 minutes.
Oh,
And
okay, so I can say that to them.
and the
you
buses,
can.
this started with buses, and I'm sure I've said this here before, but there was an issue in Southington Public Schools where the buses lined up right in front of the building, and the classrooms were right there. And the kids were getting sick because the diesel fumes were going right into the second floor of the building. And they took a while to figure out what's the matter with these kids, and it was the buses. And the buses were coming to school like, this was high school, because typically the high school is the first one to get out, so the bus drivers would get there early and they'd sit there and they'd talk to their buddies, but then leave their buses running.
Hmm.
So the state, you know, of course, you couldn't just say, don't do that, they passed a law that says
Right.
3 minutes, and if you go to Bethlehem Town Hall and park your car there and going into Town Hall, it's a sign that says right on there, 3 minutes idling against the law, you know, I think they referenced the statute there or something, so it's not just buses, it's
Oh, and
cars.
at the Dedham train station where our son lives, there's no idling signs
Yeah.
right there.
So anyway,
Yeah, so
we'll
it's
follow
there.
up, but I was very
Okay.
happy that he was like,
Yeah, really receptive, and that's
Yeah.
a good start. When I
Okay.
know when the away teams come to play basketball at the WPS gym,
Good.
they'll leave that bus idling for hours.
Right,
While they're
right.
waiting.
and you know, there is an issue, because with diesel buses, that if you have diesel buses in your town in the winter time, the drivers are getting there a half an hour early to start the bus, because it does take that long for them to warm up in the diesel, the fuel, because it's a mixture of something, and it's like heating oil in your bus. It takes a long time for that to heat up so the bus will run. But you can turn it off till the third quarter and put it back on if you really, you know,
Yeah, I
but they,
don't
you know,
what the rules are, but
Well, all the more reason to build
What's
that
that?
culture that.
Right.
exactly, and once it's kind of common knowledge, then it's easier for someone like me to say, hey.
yeah, Right.
Yeah. Cause
so,
I don't like going up to.
I know,
people
it's
don't
not-
know.
No, it's
Or I could
uncomfortable.
email the principal and say, hey, last night the bus was running all day, can you let me wait 2 minutes ago?
Well, I'm gonna
That's
phone
not
them.
okay.
License plate.
Didn't we write something up about idling?
We did
We
have
did.
an article, we did a postcard, we had an article, I brought the newsletter, cause in case people don't see our leaf blowing article, you
I
know.
did, that was the other thing I didn't put on my list here, was educating the public, and we mentioned that was great. Amy, I think, didn't Amy write that? Thank you, Amy.
You're welcome.
And I wanted to talk about, since we've been talking about a lot of stuff. From LISD to
Yeah.
idling to compo, you know, all this stuff about. How do we continue to educate, you know?
Well, and
keep
what's
that
the next
going?
article, 'Cause
What-
the
yeah.
deadline is November 10th, so
November
we need
10th.
to talk about it now. That's our next What's our next topic?
I think Amy and Monique have been our volunteer writers here, because there was two things in,
I
right?
did a sustainable,
Oh.
no, not sustain, I did an invasive one with Ryan.
That's right, that's right. So any suggestions for November, right? When's it?
It's due in November, it goes out in December. I love your idea about like. Home things you can do, for stormwater, and we've had such crazy rainstorms. I just wonder if that will resonate as well in December, you know, as it gets colder and
Or
it's
the
gonna be
spring.
ice.
Right,
We talk about like salt usage or.
You could have a 3-week training course in Mexico on the beach.
I will go to that.
For the article, so, but I.
You gotta do your homework though.
How about if we do something about trying to conserve fuel and be more efficient in our homes as we're heading into winter? Because that will resonate. I don't know what that would look like yet. I'm certainly happy to give it a stab.
Great, that'd be great.
That's a December, that is
ChatGPT.
December topic, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's perfect, Amy. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, and who knows, as we sort of research, it might bring up some other things we're not thinking about, other ways to be sustainable in our winter practice.
All right, thank you, Amy. That'd be
You're
great.
welcome.
So
The 10th, right, Michelle? That's the deadline?
8th, 9th, or 10th, it's November, it's like the second, because of Thanksgiving, we need an extra time for
Yeah.
the printer to get them in the mailboxes by December 1. So
Our next meeting is the 8th. So
okay, and
that's a
then that might
Wednesday.
be the due date, I forget, it's 8,
Okay.
9, or 10.
So at the same
All right.
time, we're talking about energy conservation and which is about tightening up the envelope. When you're dealing with an existing home, you also get into the area of sick house syndrome.
Yeah,
And it is a real factor in health, especially of kids, you know, asthma and things like this. And so the American Lung Association terms a home that meets a certain standard, a healthy home. And so ultimately, I think every house in the state of Connecticut is either gonna be deep retrofitted or torn down and re.
yeah.
But I mean, just because it's the distance between a standard built house and a net zero or a passive home is just so huge.
But
And so you're talking about carbon footprint, you're talking about air quality, healthy home stuff. So I think always like when we talk about you can do this, okay, it's also important for people to be aware of the bigger picture, you know, that ultimately you want a house that has no heating, cooling, and electric bill. This house, $150 a year for a 3-bedroom, single-family home, heating, cooling, and electric. It's a combination of insulation and.
But how do you avoid-
windows and-
let me just finish the last
Yeah.
two on here, and then I want to talk about that. So, traffic calming, walkability, anything going on
I
there
haven't heard
at this point?
about the grant
Okay,
yet, and all I can say is that my pedestrian sign in the depot, the one in front of the supply, did not even make it 24 hours before it got hit and smashed. So,
You're kidding.
anywho,
what sign? Because I don't.
the pedestrian, the ones that go right in the
Oh, yeah,
crosswalk
yeah.
to yield to pedestrians. Yeah, we bought them, the
Well-
EDC bought them.
He got run over?
It got run over and I had him buy the spring loaded ones, but this one got run over beyond repair. A truck must not have seen it. It's a tough corner. It's a really not a great spot for that crosswalk, but it's the only
Yeah.
spot because otherwise it dumps you into their parking lot. So it just highlights the challenges that we had going through
Well, I
there.
need to follow up with Jim. We did put money into our budget this past year, for this year, for 2 of those signs that, you know, that we have one over on, Old Litchfield Road. I think we have 3 of them right now.
Yeah.
I just see the one.
speed ones.
Yeah, and we're supposed to have 2 more, and Jim and I, even though they're state roads and we supposedly have to get state approval. I've talked about, we're putting them up, and whether they, because
Yeah.
it's this area coming through here, that
Yep.
trucks come, you know, cars, not just trucks, cars.
So Jay, even though you can't ticket people, the town could get ones that have cameras, right? 'Cause
Um,
ultimately, they are going to allow ticketing, don't you think?
Yeah.
well, there is the state did allow some of that this year at traffic lights. There was a bill passed, but it wouldn't apply to us, there's no traffic light here, so it has to be related
And
to a
there's not even a
traffic
stop
light.
sign unless we come this way on Beach,
so-
so.
But I know, I tend to go a little fast and when I see it, it's like whoops.
It
Okay.
makes me slow down every time.
But I do think like if you know your picture's being taken, you're gonna take a
Well,
little.
the ACLU will take some exception to that. That is an issue. I mean, the ACLU has been fighting the issue of the ticketing lights at the tickets that come out from traffic
Right.
stops. They've talked about a lot of people running red lights in the city. So I guess that's where the biggest issue is.
Protect people running red lights.
It's the idea of taking people's pictures without their, I'm not.
Oh,
defending, but-
picture
Yeah.
of them, not their license.
Yeah,
plate.
and then you get it, I'm not exactly clear why they're,
I was
but
just
they're.
gonna say, well, maybe they shouldn't run the red light if they don't
Yeah,
want their picture
I
taken.
agree with, I don't disagree, but there's something about, and it's the old, and I get it, it's the old. Once you start with that, what's the next thing? And it's slippery
In
slope.
Europe, they'll take a picture of your license. If you were speeding, you get a ticket in the mail.
Right,
Well, and that's what we're.
Can we do that
talking
now?
about. It's allowed in some states, but
Yeah.
not in Connecticut.
Connecticut's one of the few
okay.
that does, so.
Yeah.
I know
so-
that's a big deal for Jim and the other selectmen in Litchfield County have talked to the state, Maria Horn, a number of times about this because we don't have the manpower to be able to be out there
Yeah.
having
That's the problem.
police monitoring that as much as we'd like to.
So, just a quick thing, Jay, Jim made the observation a few months ago about seeing somebody walking a pram with a baby in it along the road. And saying he felt like he should report them to child welfare, right? And yeah, I mean, you walk along a lot of these roads and you are taking your life in your hand. But it's like, wait a second, something's wrong with this picture.
Right, you should, right.
And I mean, I hear not just the people that you expect to complain about the size of vehicles and the speed they're going on, but local contractors who notice a lot of, large trucks on jobs, just people ramming down, small roads. And no awareness or attention to anything other than I gotta get somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And so then the next observation is, I think almost all the roads in the town are 35 miles per hour or less. And you're allowed to have a, road, whatever, ready, utility vehicle. I mean, if you think about it, people retire to places like the Villages in Florida and everybody is in a golf cart. I mean, it may be crazy, but you could think about a town where people are driving around or biking around or walking. All in small vehicles that basically go 35 miles per hour, and that's part of what.
I've got a long way to go for that.
Yeah.
So let's
35 miles per hour is like.
Before we make everyone buy a golf cart.
Yeah.
That's our vehicle.
You go 30 miles.
But I think in that vein, I don't think it's the person who's walking in the. It's not their issue, like.
Right, they
We
shouldn't
should
be
be providing safe places, we should have more sidewalks.
Yeah,
designated
ambulatory
park-
access.
bike lanes, designated safe space, as far as your shoulder that's marked off or something.
Right,
that's
well, the
safer.
trouble is many of our roads
I know.
are too narrow to do that, I mean,
And if you're walking from your house,
Yeah.
because you're getting to somewhere.
Well, like that stretch from our
Yeah.
house here, not.
And Jim being the chief of police, I mean, he's genuinely concerned about that person.
right,
Yes,
But I have to tell an anecdote, that John, Allen, said to me, oh, Chris, that reminds me of the ham and ham. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, Phyllis, every time she roasted a baked ham, she cut an inch off of it, put the inch in the fridge, and then baked the rest of it. And so he said, Phyllis, why do you do that? And she says, oh, I don't know. Oh, I guess because my mother did it. So John says, like a couple months later, he says, my mom comes, mother-in-law comes for Christmas. He says, Mom, you cut an inch off your hand before you bake it? Oh, yeah, I used to. But I finally got a bigger pan. So there are all these things that we do without thinking, just because we always have,
Right,
or,
right.
you know, whatever. I speed all the time by the Morris landfill, because, I mean, what is that road built for?
Right, not 35.
Yeah, line run.
All right, so at 6 o'clock, you know me, about an hour as much as I can handle, so I wanna start a little discussion about. And we don't have to, I wouldn't expect it to finish it tonight, but I do wanna, we've talked here about energy efficiency and how do we do, you know, all that sustainable things. And we're gonna have this, I'm confident that next Tuesday, the town will approve the funding to build it, to renovate the ambulance building. And I would like to have some help. And we have some good people, Peter Bowman's on that committee, and
Elliot's
Elliot
familiar with the
Johnson is
past
on that too, yep, so we have some good people on there.
Jay, the
There's, you know, so I wanna get some input from folks as to what did we think about,
Well, the architect was supposed to submit like an add-on, if you will, for making it net zero, right?
I have not, no,
In
not
the
that
original RFP.
well, we did not get that, I will
Okay.
tell you that. So, Yes.
I just think the goal should be, if you're building this beautiful building for all that money, that it should be net zero, but that should just, I mean, if you're gonna do it, this is the time to start.
The time you go, I totally agree.
so what I would like is,
And he's got so much information and.
well, maybe what we could do,
Don't
since,
stop this.
well, would you do this, Chris, then? For the next meeting, have a definition of what that means, net zero means. And what would that entail in terms of doing that? And I know you said something, you said some stuff which I thought I had in my pile here to me, the other, that you sent out to everybody. But I think that's where I'd like to
Yeah.
have that discussion, and whether I'd be, share it with the committee, talk to plant, you know, I'd love to get Peter Bowman's input as an architect and our building inspector. I'd like to
Also,
get.
He's got experience with large commercial municipal buildings.
And, you know, I assume in planning, that's part of, I don't know if they talked about that at all in the P O C CD and what they're doing, but, you know, maybe it's too late for that, but then, you
No,
know.
the new one, it's gonna be in the new one.
And what are they, I guess I can ask Wayne, what is his definition? What are they using for that? So that we can, you know, I wanna make sure we incorporate that into this plan.
You know, Jay, you know, your experience with the schools is, I mean, you basically don't just deal with the building being designed and built, but you deal with the commissioning and the operations and maintenance.
Right.
Okay, and so if you're really looking at a building, I mean, I always think you should look at it for the life of the 30-year mortgage.
Absolutely,
Okay?
sure.
And
50.
I don't know what the stream would,
Yeah.
the timeline would be for commercial or municipal building, but.
Well, that's for sure, Chris, but
But this is not information that is difficult for people that do this all the
Right,
time,
right.
right?
Well, the trouble I found in my experience is that I'm not a professional builder and I'm not that, you know, when you start talking with architects about it, you need to be able to tell them what you want, not asking them to do that, because I don't, my experience has been with school building people anyway, I'll
I
just
think
put
you
it
wanna
that
need
way.
an engineer.
That they're really not, you know, oh, we gotta do this, you know, they're trying to design something that'll win them an award more than I feel like trying to make sure that they build a building that,
Magazine cover.
yeah. So, and I don't think we're gonna, you know, we have an existing building we're remodeling, so we're gonna get what we have there with some add-ons, but
So this is generally, I think, where you bring in an engineer who specializes in this, okay? And they deal with it in small buildings, but like, that Willow Creek development, I mean, they just decided we're going pass it.
But you have to be, and the reason I'm asking for some guidance and some definition is, I think you have to be able to tell them what it is you want, not just say, we want it to be net zero. You have to tell them what I think you gotta give more than that. I know, you know, they know what that means. I don't know what it means exactly, so,
It's actually pretty simple, Jay. It's the envelope And so that's like a certain level of insulation in the ceiling, certain level of insulation in the walls, it's way more than what you normally do.
Right,
It's
but when you say
triple
net
pay,
zero, what does that mean? Does it mean
No, but-
you're not gonna use any
Net
energy?
zero-
The what you use, you.
Okay.
We're
Okay,
generating.
net zero is basically where at the end of the year, like if you, sign up for solar with Eversource, what they look at is, okay, how much energy are you using every year, okay? And, they'll allow you to put enough solar panels on the building, so at the end of the year, you have, no.
You're
Zero.
generating as much as you're using.
Zero is just zero.
Okay,
And
so
it's-
that's
it's
what
a
you're,
little wild because you collect more sun and power in the winter,
Right,
the summer, and then.
Right.
Anyway, so, but they do it over the whole year, but that building doesn't necessarily have to be an energy efficient building. And so if you focus on passive house, which is about the envelope, it's the walls, the ceiling, and the slat and the windows. One of the problems that we would have experienced in the sixties and the seventies was the Binz's, they built that really tight house. And Brian used to joke that when he cooked fish in January, he could smell it in March.
right,
Well, because we didn't address air exchange.
Right.
And so that's the other part of it, so that you have a healthy home. But it's really very simple for an architect and an engineer who understand it. The problem is when you get into really difficult sites that don't, like when you put the solar on the firehouse, it probably wasn't ideal, right?
right,
All right. so-
right. We're not gonna generate enough to cover that building.
Exactly.
But-
You can do it
but
here.
What Chris is saying is they go hand in hand, like, we're in Connecticut, we only get so much sun. That building, the ambulance building's on the back of the hill, so in order to come out net zero, you need to reduce the amount of energy that's required as much as possible. Which
Right.
is the thick envelope, the
So-
higher
so-
insulation,
So should,
super efficient, the HVAC.
But those are things we can identify.
right,
Right.
I'm sorry,
Well,
what?
you can certainly,
Those are things that we could identify
so you
as
already
what we
did
want to
it.
happen.
Yeah, no,
When you say you put it out for bid already,
well, what's that?
the ambulance building.
No, well, we did no, we haven't gone out to bid for an architect for the ambulance building. We had somebody do an initial design.
I feel pretty confident if you say you want net zero energy. They know what that means enough to
Well,
address
I would
it.
give you-
I'm gonna caution you because I had a project where we had two architects who were basically designing to net zero. And one architect focused on the envelope, so that you had a minimal number of solar panels. The other one designed it for geothermal. Which,
Yeah,
but the
but
problem with
that's-
geothermal is the electricity you need to run all the pumps to
That's,
the wells, it gets crazy.
Well, the thing is,
So
Well,
net zero can be deceptive.
but
It
here's,
should be, but they still probably needed enough solar panels to cover the electricity and run the pumps
Well-
with the geothermal. though.
Well, okay, but see, here's the problem, look, if you have a house, you got two ranch houses. And one built passive and one just built to code. You'll see, the one built to code, the roof is loaded with solar panels, and maybe it's not even enough. And then you go to the one built to passive house, and there are like 4 panels on it, okay? So you really, the whole
So
deal
why
is.
would anyone do that? Is the insulation on passive that expensive? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay, if you're building a passive house, you're focused on the envelope, you're gonna end up with like, but if you've got like a retrofit.
Okay.
Or if you've got somebody who just wants to build the code. And then try to cut their electric bills,
Hmm.
you're not necessarily.
You're short-sighted.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
what you're saying, let me just, so somebody designing to net zero, the idea is to say, I'm building this 8,000 square foot building.
Right,
And I can calculate based on the envelope and where it is and all, how much electricity I'm gonna use
right.
and heat.
He-
Right, and electricity. So based on that, and if I build it like this, I'm gonna need 4 acres of solar panels to cover, or I can build it like this. and I only need 1 acre of, or I can build it like, and again, we're retrofitting this building, so that reduces our ability to do. But is that the point that you're
Yes.
making? Okay.
So Jay, very simple PERS rating thing, okay? And in some countries, it's like when you go into the market and we see like what's in, you know, the food you're gonna eat. They have like a rating that tells you what the energy rating of the building is. And so this one, it goes from 0 to 100. 100 is basically a house built to code. Then if you build it to Energy Star status, it might get down to 65. And if you build it to passive house, it might get down to 10, 15. But then when you add the solar panels, you actually end up becoming a net producer.
Right.
Okay,
Well, but passive is not, for this project, is not probably, because we're with a building we already have existing. And we're not tearing the building out apart, you know, we're not,
Okay, so
no, I understand, Carol, right?
Should have said for $3.4 million
Yeah.
worth of renovations, they could buy their insulation.
Well, and one of the things I'm frustrated about is what's the actual cost of the garages, because we haven't gotten that, and that was part of it.
Well, that was our question.
Well,
There's no number identified.
Well, we asked for that, but anyway,
so this is probably where you need, like, if you were talking to somebody like Turner.
yeah,
As a project manager, and you were asking them to give you, you know, budgets for these different
Yeah.
things, they'd come back in a week with them, right?
right.
So you need people that are,
So the issue I found and why I was trying to say I want to be able to say to them what it is, and I'm getting to understand it better now, but is my experience with those folks in schools, and I'm just talking because
right,
is that they're not interested, you know, like I said before, that's not it always so, okay, they do all that, and then the cost, instead of being 4 million, comes out at 8 million, and now you're value engineering, my favorite term, basically cutting
God.
everything out that
Cutting
you
out
want.
all the fun
Okay,
stuff.
You know, so get back down to the number that you want, that you got for funding, so I don't wanna, you know, I don't.
okay, well, so like if you, for instance, I go on a lot of Connecticut passive house tours, and there is an apartment building they built in New Britain. And the developers, I think it was Dakota, and the builders, everybody, the architect realized that it made so much more sense to do this passive house. And the cost per square foot was really remarkably low, okay? There are people that have read the writing on the walls, the developers of Willow Creek Housing in where's that in North Hartford, just near Bloomfield, right? Well, anyway, there are 400 homes, okay? And they decided mid-project, like, this is crazy, we're gonna make these passive house. So there are people that understand this, and maybe that's the thing to do, is to, you know, reach out to like Connecticut Passive House and say, who could we come and make a presentation?
Well, the other thing I think, and like you're saying, the mindset is changing.
Yeah.
We just, as a town, we have to say, no, this is important to us.
Right.
Right, this
We
is
know
what
that
we
the
want.
energy cost over 20 years, you
Yeah.
remember when Peter Becker came and spoke to us, he's like, talk to people about their dollars and
Right,
cents.
Right, that's,
Right?
yeah,
Right.
It might cost more upfront, but it'll cost longer down the road, and it's the right thing to do, and we're the town, and this is what we believe in, so figure it out. That's what you're bidding on,
Right.
like, make it net zero, show me
But
the
also,
options.
let's talk about the grand list. We like that we've got a good grand list. Well, what happens is all of a sudden in 10 years, all the buildings in town are basically, you know, dinosaurs. So grand list plummets, right? You want to invest in something, you want a house that holds its value over 30 years.
well, I mean, our point about any town building is we want it for the last 50 years. We want that building to be there
Right.
for a long time, it's not
So,
just, it's not my house that I'm living
We're
in,
in
it's
for
for
the
the next
long haul,
generation, yeah.
and then the long-term operating of that is
Right.
part of what we're thinking about. Don't let them value engineer,
You know,
right?
I'm like,
Right,
drives me
so,
crazy.
so
You
they,
gotta persuade them.
right, well, that's why I wanted to have this, it's very helpful.
So
thank
think about like when I renovated all sorts of old homes, like Carter's on the Green, whatever, and people would say, you know, I love this home, I wanna save it. Great, it's like, make it look like it was never renovated, it's just gotta
Right,
look like it was
right,
always
yeah.
well maintained.
Yeah.
We love old homes, okay? But then you begin to think, what could I build today that 200 years from now, people will go, that person was foresighted. And I think, you have towns that focus on good architecture, cities that focus on good architecture. I mean, Mark Picton said long ago, sustainability could be, the brand of the town. And it benefits everybody. And one of the gifts that a town that has a lot of wealth and affluence is to basically help create the standards to do the groundwork for other communities that don't have our good fortune.
Yep.
To follow that.
Great. Well, on that note,
Equity and diversity.
I like that.
You're on it.
All right. Anything, any public comment?
Listen, yeah, go ahead.
Amy, anything from you out there?
Jay.
All set, thank you.
All right, thank you.
I'll let you.
Carol and I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to build a small house without losing an arm or
Yeah.
leg. And so there are all these things that you just assume, you take for granted, that, you gotta cut an inch off the hand. Well, if you told me I was gonna build a house on piers, I would say, cheap, junk, whatever, but then I began looking around and I looked on the lake, on the steep slopes. Those old lake cottages are basically built on piers, okay? And then there's this house on Calhoun Street, you can't see it, it's 800 square feet. It's tucked in the woods, it's a forest retreat, when you need to get away from your 4,000 square feet home. Anyway, but it's built on piers, okay? So what's the impact of that? All of a sudden, an 800 square foot house or whatever, 1,000 square foot house, instead of having the excavated area, the hole, which most excavators, they want 50 feet back all around, so you're cutting trees all over
Yeah.
the site. You're disturbing 16,000 square feet to do a 800 square foot hole, and then you gotta restore it. So, it's like, wait a second, just piers. Now it's like so much more control. You don't have the site disturbance, you don't get into the sort of difficulties of stormwater management. And in terms of getting affordable housing, we have to figure out how to close the gap between, what they cost and what we can sell them for. And the foundation is a big deal.
Is that winterized? That like, it's.
Oh, yeah, they call it, you just insulate it from below.
All right,
Okay, so
That's
anyway,
Interesting.
that's great. Thank you for your help there. I just wanted to let people know next Friday, October 20th, which could be in a couple of weeks, I think. The Washington Rotary Club and the town of Washington invites all of our town government and public safety volunteers, which you guys are all part of that, to a reception at 5 o'clock to 6:30 here in Town Hall. So, or no, at the Riverwalk Pavilion. I'm sorry, we're doing it at the pavilion this year. So please come down. There'll be some wine and some food and some speeches from Jim, I guess.
Cool.
He's quick.
What time?
5 to 6:30.
All right,
So
It's
please
Friday.
join us. It's
Friday
a
the
Friday the 20th.
I have to
right?
decline. I'm not able to make it, but thank
All
you.
right. Well, all right. All right, folks, thank you very much, and we'll adjourn at whatever this time is. Great,
Thank
thank
you,
you,
Jeff.
guys, for coming.
Thank you.
Boy,
all of the volunteers circle.
That's late for you.
I know.
all right.
I've revved up
We
drive.
put a lot of babies.
Oh, boy.